A lady wouldn't vacate private parking space. Good luck finding your licenseless car in another county police impound lot. I have lived in an apartment complex in Lisbon, Portugal for the last 4 years, and the where is important. If anyone's from here, you'll know that parking is hectic. Fortunately, my building has a private garage. However, as is often the case, some parking places are more difficult to park in than others. I have one of the easier ones. Last year, I was offered a job abroad and took it. I thought I'd be nice and parked my car at my parents' house where they have plenty of space, and left a notice in the building elevator that went along the lines of, "I'm the owner of 3B and will be away for at least 6 months. Feel free to use my parking spot." Ended up being away for longer, almost a year. Came back to see my parking spot occupied, which was okay since I offered for it to be used. Put another notice in the elevator, this time to say I was back and will be using the parking spot again. Gave it 2 ways and picked my car up from my parents. Went into my garage and my space was still being used. Had to park somewhere on the street and decided to give it another day. The day after, it was occupied again by the same car. I asked a couple of neighbors and figured out it belonged to a lady living 2 stories above me. I went up to talk to her and she immediately got defensive and said that her parking spot is very difficult for her to park in. And since I was away for longer than I had announced, I lost the space. Which is very stupid logic, as the spots are bought with the apartment. It literally belongs to me. She also told me I couldn't use her parking space instead as she was using it for storage. I went to the building admin who said he'd talk to her. He did and came back shaking his head. Nothing. I sent a registered letter telling her to stop using my space and giving her 48 hours to take her car elsewhere. The next day, I saw the unopened letter in the garbage bin beside the mailboxes. That was the final straw. I talked to a friend who owns a towing company. We chose a Saturday morning. The last few weeks she hadn't left home on Saturdays. I knew as I had been watching her car like a hawk. So I thought we'd have big chances of her not noticing anything until everything was done, and we towed her car. The plan initially was to leave the car just down the road, but that felt too close and too easy. Then I thought about leaving it in a city about 15 minutes away, but it still didn't feel quite right. My friend jokingly said, "Let's leave it in Madrid." FYI, Madrid is in Spain, about 600 kilometers, 375 miles away. I knew he was joking, but Madrid did feel right. I asked if he had enough time. He had, so off we went. Once we got to Madrid, we went out for lunch, strolled around the city and waited until it got dark and the streets were empty. In the meantime, we had already decided on where to leave the car, a handicapped parking close to a police station, and so we did. As a bonus, my friend also took both license plates off the car. Then we drove back home. It has been 2 weeks and I still haven't seen her car since. One of these days, I might leave a letter in her mailbox telling her to contact Madrid police. But in the meantime, I'll enjoy being able to use my parking whenever I want to. Ooh, you hear that? That is your Geiger counter going off because I declare this revenge officially nuclear. This was perfect. Mwah. Alrighty guys, this story was called "Drive Long Sharp Nails into My Fence? Kill My Vine? Enjoy the weeds my siblings with?" This happened in the summer of 1974, when I was 4 years old. When I was a kid, we had a next-door neighbor who was a total megabeep. Megabeep was a 40-something woman who liked high heels, mules, big jewelry, lots of makeup, and wore long, flowy caftans in garish colors that did not flatter her. She had a big perm, remember, it's the 70s, a huge butt, and was notorious in our neighborhood for being an entitled dingus. Her favorite thing to do was go onto neighbors' landings, either early in the morning or late at night, and steal decorations and potted plants which she would then put in her back garden. She once even dug up someone's small tree out of their front yard because, according to the neighbor, she felt it would look better in her garden. Total baseball pitcher. For the most part, she left my family alone. My family has a take no poo rep in the neighborhood and she knew it. She'd only glare at me and my siblings when we played outside. She hated kids. Sadly, that didn't last. The glaring, not the kid hating. One day, one of my sisters got badly sliced by a long nail when she went to pick flowers off the passion flower vine on the fence. Turned out, Megabeep had hammered dozens of long nails into our fence so she could hang potted plants she'd most likely stolen. The leaves on the vine had hidden them until my sister got sliced. She had to get a tetanus shot, which made her sick all day. Mom was angered. So she went out and actually spent the rest of the day hammering each and every nail back out through the fence and back into Mega Beep's garden, causing many of the pots to fall and break. This is probably why she did what she did. About a month later, my mom goes into our kitchen and sees a man in our yard. She goes out and asked, "What the flip are you doing?" Guy tells her he was a gardener and had been hired to get rid of the vine on the fence. Mom asked him who hired him to do this. "The owner of the fence," he told her and gestured towards Mega Beep's house. Mom told him, calmly, since none of this was his fault, that it wasn't Mega Beep's fence and she was the owner. The poor guy was horrified. However, the damage was done. He'd already cut into the hardwood and roots, and now our vine was dead. After the poor guy left, Mega Beep stiffed him. We found out later, Mom went to Mega Beep's house and confronted her. That jagweed didn't even deny it. Just laughed in my mom's face and said,
"I did it, so what? It's not like you can do anything about it."
Then sauntered back into her house. She just messed with the wrong family. 2 days later, Mega Beep went on a 2-week vacation with her husband, also a butthole, to Cabo. Revenge time! The day she left, my older siblings, along with a family friend, decided Mega Beep's back garden needed improvements. So they climbed the fence, went into her garden, dug up all the pretty flowers and small trees, carted them out along with the stolen decorations, and replaced them with high pollen weeds, quick-growing ivy, and lots of poison oak and poison ivy that they'd carefully dug up from a nearby state park. I was too young to help, sadly. We then temporarily moved our 3 dogs into our backyard. Neighbor was afraid of them despite the fact they were 2 Pomeranians and a small mutt. We also had a 9-foot fence, which was too high for her and her husband's fat butts to climb, so we knew our garden would be safe from her. Family excitedly waited. When Mega Beep got back and saw her new and improved garden, she threw the biggest, most epic tantrum and meltdown we'd ever seen. It was spectacular! A whole class of sugared up, peaked off preschoolers couldn't have thrown a bigger tantrum. From the top of the fence, we all watched. Dad took the day off to see the freakout, as he put it, as Mega Beep screamed and ranted, pulled her hair, kicked the weeds, and threw anything she could get her hands on, all the while cussing and screeching like she was getting a chili powder enema. Then she spotted all of us watching her. She yelled and cursed at all of us, laughing kids, coming to the correct conclusion that we had done this to her precious garden. By this time, all the surrounding neighbors were also watching, but of course she zeroed in on us. Mega Beep then stormed over to our house and banged on our door until Mom opened the door. Dad let her deal with it as he was still laughing his butt off. Mega Beep then demanded my family to not only pull all those ugly plants out and to, of course, pay for the new ones and plant them. And to do it now, right now. Our mom just looked at her, yawned, and told her she had zero proof it was her kids who'd done it. Mom knew, even sat and watched with me as my siblings did it, laughing the whole time. I think at one point my dad even helped. Mom then reminded her that she had stolen dozens of plants from the neighbors, had been caught blatantly stealing from their front gardens, yet she was surprised that someone had retaliated. Mom laughed, told her to step off, and went back inside. She ranted at us through the door for about an hour till her voice blessedly gave out, then stomped back to her house. She avoided us from then on and gave my mom a death glare whenever she saw her. Mom would just smile, give her the finger, and go about her business. She was intimidated by my dad and wouldn't do anything when he was around, but Dad worked a lot, so he wasn't there most of the time. We donated most of the dug up plants to neighbors she'd stolen from and returned the stolen ornaments and decorations to their rightful owners, if we found them, but kept 2 rose bushes, which we planted by our back gate, a ceramic hearth cat, which I still have, and a glass and metal sun god decoration nobody claimed. Mega Beep never did get rid of all the weeds and didn't realize it was poison oak she was pulling barehanded until she and her husband got horrible rashes over a third of their bodies, and I was told in some very unfortunate places. Almost kill someone we respect and put the blame on us, lose life as you know it. So anyway, it is the early 90s and I was in my 20s working as an electrician with my best friend. We were known as the Hawkeye, me, and Trapper / Honeycutt. team of our crew, and we kept everyone on the job site laughing and in good spirits, even in the worst of times. We were working the new construction of an elementary school and had been on site since the very beginning. We were 2 weeks away from Punch-Out. That is where construction is complete and inspections are done, looking for any flaws or corrections that need to be made. Anywho, the superintendent over the whole construction site was a major jackhole, and he had been since day one. He was new and wanted to make a name for himself. It was his first time running a job and he had made several mistakes. And always blamed others. Remember me mentioning the worst of times? He constantly cut corners to save on costs, which would turn around and bite him later on. He had gotten several good hands fired. He would run good contractors off of the job and bring in his friends to replace them. The drywallers and painters were a couple of examples. And I had heard that he had half of the plumbers run off and replaced with his crew as well. He was a total jackhole to us electricians as well, wanting us to work overtime but not willing to pay it. He was really wanting to keep us behind so that he could charge the company fines. Our small company finally brought in a couple of extra hands, which really peaked him off even more, because we were starting to catch up. By the time Christmas rolled around, we were ahead of everyone else, and as mentioned, the job was nearing punch-out status. 2 weeks before Christmas, my friend's car, since I was his roommate, I carpooled with him as I didn't have my own transportation. Well, it lost its rear end and we, my best friend and I, missed 2 days of work repairing it. The jackhole superintendent saw this as an opportunity and told our job foreman to have us fired, if not run us off the job site. He tried to kick us off property himself, but since he had no legal means, tried to have our job foreman run us off, citing we were unsafe and a distraction keeping others from getting any work done. His argument was dismissed since, as I mentioned, we were ahead of everyone else. It was the day before Christmas Eve, our last day before we would be off for the holiday. He knew our supervisor, who was visiting that day, was deathly afraid of snakes. Earlier that day, a small rattlesnake had been found hibernating beneath a porta-john that had been moved and killed. Gotta love Texas. The jackhole superintendent had brought us a cooler full of beer for his crew for when the day ended. Well, our supervisor made his rounds, inspecting our work and talking to our foreman, and since we were his last stop, was ready to leave and start his holiday. The superintendent told him to have a beer and pointed out the cooler. Our supervisor opened the lid to our cooler and had a heart attack. Literally, the dead snake was inside. When the EMTs finally cleared him, the supervisor was telling him that he saw me and my friend at the cooler earlier that day and blamed us. Of course, we had been under the foreman's nose all day, in which half of it was with the supervisor, and our supervisor was aware to the jackhole's tricks, so he did not give in to the demands of us being fired. Now for the nuclear revenge. My friend and I did not take kindly to our supervisor being harmed, nor the blame being pinned on us. Do to us what you will, but do not harm those in whom we have respect. Like I said, it was the last day of work before Christmas holiday. We had Christmas Eve and Christmas off. After work, my friend and I drove to a bait shop and picked up a gallon of Catfish Charlie. For those who don't know, catfish are attracted to really foul odors, and Catfish Charlie was one of the stinkiest baits used for fishing catfish. I mean, one whiff will turn your stomach and your face will turn green. A cast iron stomach is what you'd need to not lose your lunch. We drove back to the school and around back to where the air handler unit was. For those who don't know, the air handler is the main environmental unit of commercial buildings, AC/heating. We opened up the main intake duct and dumped the whole bucket of Catfish Charlie and closed the duct back up. For good measure, we had also added about 1.5 pints of water and stirred into a nice thin paste so that it would not quickly dry out. I did learn that, even though we were longtime smokers, I could hold my breath a full 1.5 minutes and my friend 2 minutes. Probably due to him being ex-military. Neither of us could see for about 10 minutes due to the tears, and it was a miracle we didn't lose the contents of our stomachs. Even in Texas, winters can get cold, including on the coast, and this was a particularly cold winter, staying in the 20s and teens Fahrenheit. It even snowed on Christmas. Not enough to write home about, but this maybe happens once every 10 to 15 years. Remember, this was Wednesday, and like I said, we had Christmas Eve and Christmas off, and then the weekend. 4 full days for that stink bait to stew in the running heat system. We came to find out later that the jackhole superintendent and his cronies had forgotten to lower the main thermostat before leaving for the long winter holiday weekend. The thermostat is normally lowered to 50 degrees Fahrenheit when closed during cold weather and raised to 82 degrees Fahrenheit when closed during warmer. Yeah, it was left at 75 degrees Fahrenheit that whole weekend. It's Monday, and my friend and I pulled up to quite the scene that morning. Martians on all fours seemed to be littering the grounds of the school. Projectile vomit spewed everywhere. There was an ambulance and 3 fire trucks on the scene with firemen in full rubbers, including respirators running around everywhere. All the doors and windows of the school were open with giant fans venting the buildings. The air was putrid and we turned green upon exiting the vehicle.
Oh, holy fuck,
Was all I could say.
oh, what the heck happened here? Ugh.
Our boss was sitting on the hood of his car next to ours. His breakfast artfully painted the ground. The jackhole superintendent and a couple of his guys were in the back of the ambulance on oxygen as they had taken the full brunt upon entering the building. Okay, let's tally the damage. The smell had permeated everything. And I mean everything. The school, besides cafeteria, was fully carpeted. The drop ceilings were of the fiberglass type, as well as the insulation, so they absorbed the smell. The walls that weren't cinder block were papered and not painted. Since the inner ductwork was the insulated type, on the inside, all of that had to be replaced as well. Needless to say, tens of millions of dollars in damage. Also, a fence had to be erected to prevent such a thing from ever occurring again. Came to find out, the superintendent had skipped on the insurance and pocketed the money, so needless to say, it fell to his company to cover all the costs. All of his underhanded dealings came to light in the end as well. Needless to say, he lost his job and was arrested, losing his contractor's license forever. Well guys, you know what they say, revenge is a dish best served stanky. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.